Okay. I would like to ask the panelists to come up on stage. Marco. And I believe the first introduction slides will be Marco. Can we put up the presentation? Thank you, Goran, for a very, very good introduction to the panel. It was very nice, and now I believe we go even further, where no soul has gone before, right? Marco, thank you.
I wouldn't promise that immediately. Like, wow, here I am again. Oh no, Marco. I still work for the RIPE NCC. Haven't fired me over lunch. Yeah. Reality often far more cruel than fiction. What did you say? We live in a world of amateurs. Oh dear. Summary of Lost Talk. They don't know what they're doing. Summary of many IoT talks. They all go like, oh, this is this giant threat coming. Help, what can we do? And our usual answer, because of course we know what we're doing, let's teach them something. They need to learn. Fancy word, capacity building. But it's the IoT. Most of it is still fiction. Most of it is still on the drawing board. We haven't built any of that stuff yet. We see small patches going along, but that whole integrated system that we're talking about, I don't know. Do we actually know where we are? We tend to claim we know how the internet works, but the IoT, that's a different beast. We're kind of thought about, when I was thinking about it, kind of thought back of these guys. By looking at the very few successful attempts, mostly the birds, and kind of pieced it together to that famous night or famous afternoon at Kitty Hawk, and managed to be the first ones to actually have a controlled mechanically propelled flight. Little did they know. This was an absolute game changer. Turned the world literally upside down. And we built this massive industry out of it, and massive support infrastructure. We built airports at every corner, navigation aid networks, radar came along, air traffic control centers, all that stuff. That's because these two guys were smart enough to figure it out. This is where we ended up. This is today. This is an A320 flight deck. Oh, their steering wheel is even missing. That's how far we're very big network of sensors, actuators, two big power plants. There's lots of external inputs, you know, ground radar, weather radar, proximity warning, like collision systems. It is aware of its environment. If another aircraft gets too close, it figures out what to do. Autopilots, there's a ton of computers in there, and in the middle sits a user. In fact, in the middle sit two users, because when it comes to aircraft, we like our redundancy. 2 wings, 2 engines, 2 pilots, in case one breaks. And that's really important, because as much as we talk about autopilots and auto-land features, and these things really can fly themselves, well, almost, you still need that guy in the front. And that guy in the front took quite a while to get there. Years of training, hundreds of hours in simulators, before you even get to touch the real thing, let alone that they trust you enough to fly with 160 cattle in the back. I mean, what would you think if just before departure, that flight attendant walks up to you and say like, hey sir, how would you like a bit more legroom and a bit of a view? Got a seat up front and it's free. No worries, programmed at all, you know, all you have to do is just fire it up and press start, it will fly themselves. I wouldn't feel that comfortable. Here is my multi-million-dollar, very high-performance machine. And if I take my credit card with a bit of a spending limit, probably need one of those black ones, Go out to the shop, buy one, come home, plug it in, hook it up, and hey, I'm on the internet. In fact, I'm not only on the internet, I am part of the internet. Zero training, zero certification, no simulator hours. We live in a world of amateurs. Are we still feeling that comfortable? So of course, no, the world economy doesn't really depend on these things, right? Lives? Go have a chat with the NHS. What happens to a hospital when your computer network crashes these days? Oh dear. We just let them go. Yes, of course, we train them, usually after the fact. Usually most people that come to our training courses and attend our conferences already have this machine up and running. They're already part of the internet. And what we train them mostly about is defensive. How to protect your network from others. How to set up root filters so the next clown that comes around doesn't break your network as he crashes. That's sort of the moral of our training. That's the pinpoint. Isn't it a bit weird? This multi-billion-dollar industry, whole economies depend on it. We just plug it in, free for all, let's go. I know it's the spirit of the internet. It should be open and it should be accessible to everybody. Network configuration panel. Oh no, wait, this is my phone because I've upgraded the software. And this is my laptop, same vendor. Network configuration panel. And of course, once you've mastered these, small step to a server. Right? All the same. Okay, I cheated. That server screenshot is a free BSD installer. It's got absolutely no relationship with Mac OS X that runs on my laptop, right? We're not making it any easier for these users. And we're not making it any easier for ourselves, because we yank this kid off the street who knows how to run a laptop, and we make him sysadmin overnight. Good luck with that server. Training, certification. Okay, so I hear you think, and I can actually show you some of the details. This is the primary flight display. Now, it really is very close in the way things are presented, the order, the color scheme. It's very close. It's an easy step. Now here you think like, oh yeah, I got lucky, you know. The guys who worked for Boeing then moved to Airbus, did the same thing over and over again. It's a small industry, just like us. One day you work for Apple, next day you work for Google, and you do exactly the same. Don't we? Not so sure. Okay, so we established the fact. Airbus and Boeing got lucky, as they've got the same crew doing the same thing over and over again. And that same crew apparently also worked for Embraer in the 90s in Brazil, and in the 80s had a short stopover in the Netherlands when they designed the Fokker glass cockpit. Is that still coincidence? Or are we looking at something else? Are we looking at years of studying human behavior? Years of trying to figure out how does the user best work with our systems? How can we prevent that user from making mistakes? Make it come natural, that indeed after a few years of training, he can really run this plane on autopilot. He knows exactly which switch to hit without actually much thinking. And not only that, but then sharing that knowledge at conferences like this. Engineers talking to each other. Hey, this is what I found out. Look how cool this is. And of course, another great example, every incident that does happen is really thoroughly investigated. And not only that, but that investigation is part of public record. Everybody who wants to can go, read these reports, learn from it. Make sure they don't make the same mistakes. Make sure that their systems are adapted to cope with whatever users can throw at it. And that's a lot, trust me. I mean, this is decades and they still crash every once in a while. So what's the core difference then? It's the airline industry, which is licensed. You really need that pilot license, and you probably also need a big license to start up an airline, etc. And it's extremely highly regulated, probably one of the highest regulated industries in the world, but also very highly harmonized. Once you have that license, you're kind of allowed to fly all over the world. Once your aircraft is certified in one country, yes, you can fly to other places. This is a very high degree of harmonization, not only in the user interfaces, also in regulation. Same rules mostly apply to the same industry. Because the stakes are really high. As I said before, the world economy depends on it, and every time one of these things takes off, there is at least 160 lives at stake. And we like it that way, right? We feel totally comfortable with this high degree. Here's our industry. Non-licensed. Everybody can buy a router, get an ASN and plug it in. Voila, you're on the internet. And non-regulated. Okay, sometimes you have to fill out a bit of paperwork before you can call yourself an internet service provider, but it hardly has a name. You need to register somewhere, maybe pay a small registration fee. There's nothing big. Yes, and sometimes local laws apply, a bit of content filtering, but they're certainly non-harmonized. The moment you step over that border, completely different game, completely different telecoms law, completely different registration requirements. There's nothing there. Why? Why? Because our stakes are so low? The internet is not important? Nothing depends on the internet? I don't know. In fact, when I say we're non-regulated, it's a lie, because we are regulated. We regulate ourselves. It's called the multi-stakeholder model in some other venues. But this is really where we are now. Because if we don't make the right choices, somebody's probably going to make them for us. This really is the big split when the IoT comes along. Is this regulated or is this self-regulated? Maybe time to look at what some of our colleagues in other industries are doing. Learn a bit. I'll leave it here for the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. Well, this is a good starting point for thought. Please, Kevin, a few initial thoughts, and then we move to the discussion.
So I think Goran made a very good introduction to this topic and sort of outlined a lot of the issues, and Marco also sort of led into kind of this sort of thing that I wanted to bring up really. So I'm really talking about this from my own sort of practical perspective as a user and a consumer of some of these Internet of Things. The only thing I would disagree slightly with Marco is that I think that the Internet of Things is here, and I think it's been here for quite some time. So I've been interested in home automation for 20 odd years, I would say, and I actually was very early on sort of wired up my house with Cat5, pulled the cables through in anticipation that one day I would be able to automate my home. This was really before wireless networks came along, so that all became around superfluous, but in a way, maybe that's also a good thing because it also possibly reduces the chance of being hacked externally as well. But yeah, really, I started to look into this home automation issue, as I said, many years ago, and I actually got hold of Cytec, which is a Singapore-based home automation kit, and it was one of the first really comprehensive modular home automation systems where you could control things like thermostats and lights, and it actually even had a module to connect to the internet, although it was very crude. You needed to have it connected to a serial port on a computer. And in the end, I decommissioned that system because I just didn't have a computer with a serial port anymore, and it was just too much hassle to run that. But then, so then I sort of put it on ice. I thought, okay, this is too early. We have to wait for the the home automation, Internet of Things type of environment to come along. But then it kind of just came along by default. It sort of crept up on me, or it crept up on us. And actually, when I knew I was going to be invited on this panel, I kind of did an audit around my house and just to see how many devices I actually had. And it's something like 30. And I wouldn't say I'm a techno geek. I'm certainly not an average user, and I'm reasonably technically astute, I think. But it kind of surprised me, just those numbers of devices. And that's even before we get to things like lights and light switches and that type of thing. So just some of the things that I sort of, in my audit was, there was a cable modem, I've got a router and a switch. There's 3 Apple Macs on the network, there's 2 PCs, 4 iPhones, 6 iPads, there's an Android phone, and I forgot about the Android tablet as well when I did this. Got 2 smart televisions, 2 smart multimedia systems connected to the internet, gaming controller, Wii, that's connected to the internet. But then I've also got 2 webcams, which I installed partly because my partner, she likes looking at the wildlife in the back garden, and she can do that, and there's an infrared thing so you can see out at night. And then I sort of thought, well, I can use this for security as well, so I put one on the front, and these are also connected to the internet, and I thought, what an amazing thing this is. But, the webcams were pretty expensive. I mean, they were cheap compared to CCTV systems because they were internet-based, but they were still pretty expensive devices. And I spent a lot of time researching them and looking into an upgradable system, and one that supported IPv6 and TLS and all those sort of nice security features. But actually, I sort of, for various reasons, I've been working away from my main place of residence. So I used to have a regime of going around and trying to make sure I had upgraded all these devices and they were all patched every 3 to 6 months, something like this. I made a routine round. And this time I did a routine round last week, and I went to patch the webcam, and I found actually I can't even log into it anymore. And that's not because it's not functioning or I don't think it's being hacked, but it's simply that it runs TLS version 1.0 and my browser doesn't support it. It also runs Flash. And now this isn't supported on a Mac anymore. Well, it is, but you have to do extra hoops. So really, I've kind of lost control of my own device, and that's just through not looking at it and not monitoring it and not keeping it up to date or updating my software on my computer as well. So this kind of concerns me as a sort of technical user. I'm having trouble keeping track of all these devices and all the things I need to upgrade and patch and whatever. And I think, well, okay, and I haven't even studied on the burglar alarm yet, or the fire and smoke sensors. I mean, they're not even on the internet yet. Again, that was partly because when I looked at internet-enabled burglar alarms, you had to subscribe to a service, a third party. Often that was in the US, and that just put me off, so I never did that. So that's a manual system. But actually, when I install these home devices, I'm pretty much prepared to upgrade my laptop and my iPad every so often and upgrade the software. But really, when I install a light switch and a light bulb, I don't want to be doing this every 6 months or every year. I just want this to be installed for 20 years or something like that, and I don't want to be going around having to patch it. I don't have to patch my light switch for the last 20 years. So this is kind of, I think, an issue that needs to be addressed if this is going to become ubiquitous. And I haven't even gone into the decommissioned devices. There's a whole load of devices that we had on the network at one point and are now old and decommissioned, but I dread to think what would happen if they got turned on, so that's just not going to happen now. But anyway, I think the point is that, there's this thing that's often said, low-cost devices, we can't expect them to be supported, we can't expect them to, have security features. This is just not, a profit-making scenario. But then I sort of looked at this and I thought, well, is this really true? Because, actually my PC and my router was cheaper, much cheaper than my video cameras. Now, with the PC, Windows gets updated fairly often. Even Windows 7, it still has regular updates. Okay, XP is a different story, but, that's now a 16-year-old operating system. But yeah, my router is now, I think, 4 to 5 years old. It's a Draytech, and that's still getting periodic firmware updates. Every so often they come out with a patch or a feature upgrade, I'm still getting that. So, and I paid less than €200 for that device. So it's presumably still economical for them somehow to support this. But yeah, my smart television, which was €500 or €600, they got like 2 updates, I think. That was after 1 year. Then you never saw anything again. And in fact, whole features have stopped working on that TV. And I'm thinking, well, a TV, I don't want to buy a new TV every 2 years. It is ridiculous. Why are they not patching this more regularly? And it's a much more expensive device than my computer and my router. And the same with the cameras. I talked about the cameras that these are somewhere between 250 and €500 per device. I'm not suggesting these are supported forever and ever. I think that would be unreasonable. But, they had updates for 2 years and they haven't been supported since. And now actually they've stopped, in effect, I can no longer access them. I can't log into them anymore. So, I'll have to reboot them and I'll reset them and try to get control of them again. But, that's not the way really I think it should be. So, I think the message is here, presumably it is possible to provide, the Windows example, the Draytech example, it's possible to, provide ongoing support if there is some sufficient critical mass for these devices. And I just think it's the question is, how do we encourage that, or even, how do we mandate that? And I just wanted to draw attention to something that we've been working on in the Internet Society. So this is actually an initiative of the Online Trust Alliance, but they've just recently been incorporated into the Internet Society, so they were a separate organization, now I think a team within the same department that Jan and I work in at ISOC. But they are developing an IoT trust framework with 37 principles. The aim is, these principles are to secure recommendations to secure how to secure IoT devices and the data. And there's sort of 4 categories. One is about security, that ensuring the devices use cryptographic protocols by default. They're only opening ports, both physical and virtual. So in other words, they only have the actual physical ports on the devices that are necessary for the operation of that device. Also, regular monitoring of those security settings to make sure nothing's changed. And then verifiable patches. Also with the user access and credentials, so having strong authentication, insisting on that. Also encrypting the storing of credentials, and then also anti-brute forcing measures if somebody is trying to access those devices. Then there's a privacy, disclosure and transparency side. So users should be knowing what data is actually being transferred. Obviously this is in the grand scheme of things, not the actual individual bytes, of course. But also only collecting data with affirmative user support. So the user should know what data is being collected by the device manufacturer or maybe the service provider using that device. But I think perhaps more importantly, when can we expect the end of life security and patch support? When will that come to an end? And there's something I would like to know. I can live to a large extent with the fact that if I buy a device, which I know will be obsoleted at some point in time, I can live with that. I know that will happen. But I think it would be useful to know, well, okay, will that be in 2 years? Will that be in 3 years? Or will that be in 4 years? let me know that, I can make a judgment on what device to buy if I have that information. And then finally, there's the notifications, so authenticated messages about incidents and problems and issues that have arisen. So that's a commitment to the users by the manufacturers. So the recommendations are on that rather cumbersome URL. Sorry, I couldn't find a shorter version, but I guess you can access the slides online, so you can click on that link. And that is my part.
Okay. So thank you for these initial thoughts. Before I give the word to Rock for some initial thoughts, because you don't have slides, let me explain a little bit why I had the idea for this panel. So for full disclosure, I'm building a house. Well, we bought a piece of land and I'm building a house. And I'm a user now. Now I said, okay, if I'm building a house, I will build in the home automation, this IOT, all these cool things, because I'm a technical guy. And now as a user, I'm going through all this jungle of IoT, home automation things. And as for example, I was looking at buying this smart lock for the front door. And I found one that is ultra cool and excellent, and it does all these cool things and has all the whistles and bells. But then it is connected to the bell on the door and the camera in the door. So if I'm in Japan and my neighbor comes and rings the doorbell, I can see him on my mobile phone in Japan and talk to guy and open the door for him. And that's all cool and nice. But then I went into the frequently asked questions. What happens if I lose the key or my mobile phone goes out of battery? It says there, well, you need to call this number. This is our help desk, and our operators will be more than happy to open the door for you. Wow. Okay, at this point in time, all the alarms went on. Like, no, I'm not doing that. So this, for me, this seems like building a house, putting a lock on the door, putting the key into the envelope, and send it over to some random internet guys. Can you please keep the key for me? I really don't think so. So what if somebody hacks into their system and starts randomly opening my doors, windows, put the thermostat to 0 during the winter, and doing all this crazy stuff? So, and my question is the place for all this home automation intelligence in the cloud, as hype says these days, or at home? Where would we want it to be? Where is more secure? What about the security? Not let alone these devices that have pre-built username and password that cannot be changed and were part of Mirai botnet that took down half of America. Let alone that. But who can have the control of our house? So with that, I would like to ask Rock for some initial questions, and then we can we have a discussion? Because now we have all these, I don't know, Chinese people, Japanese people, everybody can build a very small device, and because it's cheap, somebody will buy it and hook it to the internet without even understanding what kind of damage it can do. Can we figure out somehow how to reach some sort of understanding of the
doesn't matter if this is the cloud connected or not. Anyway, it could be hijacked. So I will go 1 week back. It was in the Singapore. Probably the guys were the programmers, and they at least start to talk about the hardening. Discussion was like, okay, strange for me because it was, okay, it was basically the conversation between two guys, probably they were programmers, we can apply to the IoT. So you're talking about the hardening. What do you know about the hardening? The last time when I was doing the hardening, it was in the college. But at least they have the awareness that they should do something. Usually what you will see, more or less you will get pretty much from the production or development. I'm not saying that all the tools will be there, but everything is more or less unconfigured. So I agree with you, Marko. Are we able to do the self-regulation? If we will not do it, in one point we will be regulated from somewhere. So we have some things like HomeNet working group. Obviously we can have the best practice, let's say, for providers. But the main question for me is what we should do with the residential customers. Usually what you will see with the security on that devices, it's like, oh, it doesn't work. What do I need to do? Just turn everything off. Oh, now it works. What we turned off, I don't care. It's some firewall, who cares about it? Now it's working. So my main question is, we have the gazillions of these companies, and each day they are emerging in new ones. Should we put there, I don't know. If we are talking about the hardening of the OS, usually we are using some kind of Linux, doesn't matter. It's pretty old topic. If you are the system administrator, you have all the scripts there, you have the templates, you have whatever it is, but obviously the guys are not using it. I know I'm not providing the answers, I'm now providing more questions. But anyway, I agree with you. If you will not do it, I remember Marko, when we started to look for the IPv6 CPs, it was the Marko's page. There were several models and comparison. And I like it very interestingly because it was some obvious choice we would like to look into it. So this is the way how to do it. Should the community be involved, and that we will give also the residential customers evaluation of, I know it's a huge task to cover all these vendors, but at least we can do some recommendations, yes? We can rate them. We need to do that they will be aware that this site is there, that they can reach, that they can check. In the end, believe me that it happens not just some of them that they had the problem with the home network. And I agree in the end, should they really care how the home network is working? Yeah, obviously we need to take care about it. But it's like, if you would like to drive an engine, you need to know everything about the electronics, you need to know everything about the transmission. Not really. You will turn it on and you would like to drive it. But anyway, again, back to Marko. Yeah, it's the thing that we need to start to do something right now. Otherwise, don't scream and yell after it when we will be regulated.
Yeah, so you opened up quite a lot of questions. Anyone would like to address this? Marko?
Oh yeah, no, I've always have an opinion. No, you're absolutely right, and it's sad. But to the car example you gave, at least before you were allowed to drive, we take a driving test. And on the topic of providing transparency, I know there's been talks in Brussels and then talks inside the Alliance for the Internet of Things Innovation. Yes, that's a mouthful. And there's an industry association actually looking into sort of the European Industry Association for IoT, providing some IoT trust label. And the messaging in short that comes from Brussels is, we prefer the industry to voluntarily adapt some form of labeling that you're up to a standard that has yet to be written, because how do you specify a security standard? But yeah, they clearly indicate they prefer a self-regulatory approach, but it's definitely phrased in, if you don't go there, and we'll do it for you. And I think that yeah, it's hard, but I think as you said, we can do a lot here, also in terms of residentials. Basically, what goes in and out of that customer's house goes in and out of your network. I know that we kind of don't like to police our networks in that sense, but maybe see it from a different way. It's not policing your network, it's on one hand protecting your customer, but it's also very much protecting your network. Most of the IoT happens in the upper layer, that's applications. But meanwhile, we see those applications attack your router, attack your DNS infrastructure, and like you said, take out half America.
Yeah.
I still think there's, you know, this is, you know, sort of looking at the bigger picture. But actually, I'm still quite horrified by buying, shall we say, consumer devices and finding that, for example, you know, the management login is not TLS supported, or even if it does have that option, you've got to go off and get a certificate or generate a certificate, which I think for, you know, the average user is a technical step too far. You find there's all sorts of open ports by default, and you have to go through and do quite a lot of work, even on the most basic device, to try to secure that. And you know, I can make mistakes as well, and probably do make mistakes. So I would really hate to think how, you know, what my mother would do if she installs this. And then I think about all the devices which I don't really have any access to, like the Roku device, which, you know, is streaming in, you know, the online, what's it called, the streaming TV, of TV on demand stuff. I'm thinking, well, you know, I really don't know what's going on with that, to be honest. I have to go and, you know, do port scans and look at the network traffic. And I go, you know, and I'm getting to the point now in life, I used to see this as a challenge, and I used to be interested in doing this, but now actually I want an easy life, actually. And, you know, I want someone else to do this for me, somebody I can trust to do this for me. And I think that that's really the challenge that needs to be, well, that's one of the first challenges that needs to be addressed at the moment.
Goran, what are your thoughts? How can we make this, all these vendors around the world that want to build as cheap device as possible to even have a look into the security aspects?
I don't think we can without some repression. Without some repressive measures. You will not be able to buy, you will not be able to sell, you will not be able to distribute a device unless it has, and then there is a list. I don't think that any kind of self-regulation will regulate devices. I believe it will regulate their customers. I believe that customers could be taught or could be given a sort of a user device that they could understand. But I honestly don't believe that without some sort of hard regulation, we will have to deal with devices. The network is self-regulating right away. Is self-regulating as it should be regulated. It works. It works for all of us here, and it will continue to work. But I honestly believe that on the device angle, there will need to be some sort of regulation. When those devices go into networks, we can self-regulate all we want. We did it with all other kinds of internet devices very happily and very successfully. But on that device angle, I believe that there will be need for some regulation.
Okay, so I
don't love it. I know you don't love it even less, but
yeah. So
unfortunately, I'm highly doubtful that part is going to regulate itself.
So okay, I have a question for the audience. Do we have here ISP or telecom is experiencing the growth of these devices on the network? Do we have one? Hands up? No? Okay, because I would really like to hear from the operators what their plans are, how to secure the whole thing before people start connecting all sort of stuff to their network, because at the end of the day, it's the operator's network that is extended into their homes. It's a pity that we don't have the operator here that would share this with us. But can we predict? Hello?
We are from
Please. Okay, we found one.
Hello? Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm from Meynell, which is a telecom operator in Montenegro, here with a colleague that actually is our security expert. And we're still not planning on selling in the immediate future, but it's definitely something which is being analyzed. And one of the reasons why we came here today is actually to see how these issues are being handled. I know that there's a lot of things which are not regulated, and IoT is still expanding. There are many different devices which are not compatible with each other. We are still thinking of which way to go. So, in a sense, it's still an open question for us. It's something that we need to pay extra effort to analyze and to learn. So we are, in a way, a customer here, not really the leaders of the industry. We are depending on you to show us the way to go. So we have security issues in everyday work. So we are aware that this will bring an additional thing to consider and to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it.
Yeah, so if you as an operator offer sort of like a service to the user's home to set up the home automation and the security devices for the home,
how actually savvy they are technical-wise. So I have a feeling that even if we would like to, let's say, leave it, okay, so you are a customer, please worry and let us not worry about that additional thing, I think that we will probably not have that opportunity, or we must be aware that at some point it will come back to us. Mm-hmm. Because the users are simply different, and in the end, they would want us to provide something which is secure. And if you are, let's say, promoting smart home and additional security, then we have to be able to provide the full service. So I expect them to turn to us in the sense.
One last question from me, because I'm really wondering, are you, as an operator, are you a little bit worried about, because until now, the generic home was sort of like one or two PCs and then few phones and a laptop. But now people will start hooking up on their network all sorts of devices from all around the world that will talk to all kind of places around the world in secure or insecure way. Are you looking into this?
Well, yes, we are aware that the situation is becoming increasingly complicated and open to many sort of attacks. And we also, as an operator, are vulnerable to that. So it is something that we are aware of and that we are planning to address as well. But still, we are not offering it, so it's all part of of this preparation, let's say, process for these new services, which were not really up to now actually telecom oriented. But the changes are approaching, and we have to be able to actually address them. So I really do like that we have these conferences to discuss these issues, and I believe that telecom operators have to be part of it as early as possible to be, let's say, one step ahead of the possible issues. Now there are a lot of devices. I don't believe that in Montenegro there are still that many of them. There are. Let's make sure that they are, but still not so frequent. But it's just a matter of time. We are a nation which likes to have new gadgets and so on. So it's actually really maybe even a matter of days, not even so much as months and years.
So as Steve Crocker once said, we are here to help. So can we help her with some ideas, please?
We're here to help. Now, I wanna indeed sort of respond to your and latest comments on like is data more safe at home than in the cloud? And I do think that's a matter of scalability, and like I said, they're all amateurs. And they're sooner or later going to shoot themselves in the foot. And in terms of waiting until we get regulated, actually we are being regulated as we speak, and in that terms that, for instance, the GDPR becoming active, if you are a bigger company and you lose your customers' data, there's at least in the EU quite a big fine coming your way if it's proven guilty and proven it's negligence. And the NIS directive being implemented is another one where given that you are a certain size, you at least have to report incidents to the authorities. So from a consumer perspective, bigger is better, because a lot of people pay close attention to what the big ones do, and also for the big ones there's quite a bit of incentive in form of liability to do the right thing. So maybe that's indeed, like I said, the users eventually will come to you because they feel more safe, or at least feel secure that if you make a mistake, they get their money back. But it's a matter of waiting until they going to figure it out themselves and first shoot their foot off, or should we coax them directly into our hands, in our safe hands, let's say? Kevin, you also jumping next to me or not?
Well, I mean, I think there's also, you have to sort of split into two things. I mean, there's a sort of the security of user data in the cloud, but then you'll still need the devices in your home to sort of, you know, access that data or stream that data or whatever you're going to do with that data. So there's going to still all be these devices around the place at home, possibly quite insecure, you know, unmanaged, quite probably unpatched for a long time, or if ever. So I still think you've got to look at that that issue as well.
I was for 15 years operator. So anyway, you can enforce some things there. If you will get some best practice documents, you can put it also in the tenders. But if you are looking at IoT, you will always get the device from somewhere. I don't believe that we can regulate that, because I can go to whatever country and I will bring from there, which is not regulated. So yeah, so therefore my thing here, I agree with you. Yeah. So we should start to work now. My question is, should we do through the community, through the RIPE? Should we do through the ITF some things? Obviously the customer should be also aware. So if we are the community, should we do also the testing and provide the results there? Should we help the developers? Should do the trainings there? But anyway, if you are the operator, you will decide what you would like to put into the network. It's very simple if we are talking about, I don't know, DSL, fiber, I don't know which G modem there and functions which you would like to have it, yes. But now we are talking about something completely different. So anyway, if you will do and you will offer the equipment in your store, you will still see that the customers will plug in the other devices. So in the end, this can affect your services. And I know, in the end, always you as a provider, you are then guilty, whatever it is. But anyway, we are there to serve and to help the customers back. And so if we don't start to talk and address, right now, obviously, we don't have the answers. But at least, what I can see now that we have also the interest from the provider side, that we have some kind of the consensus that we should do something. So probably we cannot solve the problems with just one action. And if we will not try it, we will not see. We will not know what will happen. So, or we can just leave this Wild West out there.
So one idea crossed my mind now. You probably remember the RIPE 554, the IPv6 requirement for ICT equipment. That's actually moved many vendors into deploying IPv6 in the right manner. It's translated in 17 languages and used all around the world because it was the community document agreed with the community. Do we maybe need the security requirements for IoT equipment document done in the same manner as was
But
RIPE
you
554?
already have them for medical equipment in, as I said in the presentation, one kind of devices that are practically IoT do have a recommendation, And I don't think that some sort of recommendation I believe that it's absolutely required to have such a document as a basis for a discussion, or as a basis for, if nothing else, than equipment evaluation. To say it doesn't conform to this, you're actually using it without the opinion of the majority of the IoT and telecommunications community. That can even be put in a disclaimer of the user or network. If you connect such a device, no, we are not liable for your loss of data. Sorry.
Okay.
There are strong recommendations from the whole community that it shouldn't be used because it doesn't have necessary requirements for IoT security. So, sorry guys, you lost your data because you are the one that bought a device that is doesn't conform to the regulation specification.
So basically the operator could say, I'm providing your home with the internet access. If you connect the device that is not compliant with this and this set of requirements, if you connect it to the network, then, you know, we can even disconnect you if your devices go crazy.
Of course.
Okay.
Permission to disagree?
Yeah.
No, of course, I know you'll disagree.
No, I think it could be helpful, but I don't think it's enough. That's not how the world and liability works. In fact, a lot of these newfangled IoT things don't even have an IP stack. We call it the Internet of Things, but a lot of that stuff is actually just in the VPN back to the cloud, or not even running IP at all. Yet because we call it the Internet of Things, all of a sudden it's our problem. And it is our problem because that webcam, oh yeah, sure, customer, you put up that unsecure webcam. But I, as an operator, have to deal with multi-gigabits of traffic that disconnects other customers. And at that point, it is my problem. I can tell the customer like he did a stupid thing, and no, I won't repay your connection because you broke it. But they're not going to go after that single customer. They're going to go after you. Which brings me to the point and then sort of Rock touched upon. We can't really control what devices they put in the network. But as an operator, we can control what goes in and out of that network. So, and if I may, and then sort of continue with your question to the others, I would like to kindly rephrase it. Who provides a form of internet connectivity to customers? Wait, hold on. This is an internet conference. Must be at least one hosting or access provider in the room, right? Internet connectivity in any form, whether it's in the data center or on the DSL line to users at home. Quite a few, right? How many of you filter port 137 and TCP/23 to your own network? Telnet. Quite a few. How many of you filter those same ports towards the customer? Because we already concluded the customer kind of is clueless enough. Well, there's one. Okay, there's at least one. Really, we're very good in building firewalls to protect ourselves. Shouldn't we really just, you know, at least start with a default set that we think puts the customer in a safer place? If the customer really insists on switching it off, okay, but then also hope that he has a bit of clue and knows what he's doing. But maybe just sort of stop defaulting to stupid, because it's in my opinion really dangerous.
Okay, you know what would be really, really cool? To balance out this discussion, we have the operator, we have other security guys, to maybe hear from the IoT vendor. What's the perspective from the IoT vendor? Do we have an IoT vendor manufacturer in the room?
Jerry Spring, I think, where you bring someone in.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that idea.
Hello everyone, my name is Ivana and I'm academic, so first to say, but so we are not providing hardware for customers, but we are doing deployment. So we are doing somebody sells hardware, we are building our own protocols, and we are deploying IoT systems for the industry. So first to say about the security recommendations, they're already there. For example, US provided a cybersecurity framework that should be followed, or GCMA Alliance, they also gave a set of rules that should be followed when you are building IoT system. From my perspective, we are doing a lot of work with industry, in order to convince industry that you are safe enough, you have to prove that wired network and your wireless network that we are using gives the same performance. So from my perspective, all the security has to be incorporated by design in the solution. So we need to set up the goals, how much secure we want to be, because not all application needs the same security level. For example, you can afford to lose some data and that won't make difference for the service you are providing, but if it is like privacy sensitive data, the security bar has to be raised. So from my perspective, there is already a lot of materials there. We just need to start using it. And I mean, we are doing deployments already. So there is a lot of work that has been done already. So it's not like we're starting from the scratch. It's just how much has been done so far.
So how costly is it for you to deploy very tight security, or where is the balance? Where do you stop?
Well, that depends on how much secure you want to be. So for example, for us to run crypto algorithm on one tiny sensor that doesn't even have the proper operating system is very costly. But if you have to ensure that your device is authenticated, that you can guarantee that it's the valid device, you have to use it. So you have to pay the price. Mm-hmm. So again, it's, I see it as a compromise between how efficient and less costly you want to be and how secure you want to be. So it's, you have to pay the price in the end.
Okay, thank you. Apparently the floor is open for questions. All of a sudden. Exactly. Yeah, thank you very much.
Can I sit?
Yes, please, thank you. Please, Daniel. Should we take a couple of questions and then go?
Yeah, I wanted to speak as an IoT provider. Like we run, as some of you may know, the RIPE NCC runs this thing called RIPE Atlas. And it's small things connected to the internet, 10,000 of them. There's going to be more, so it's IoT as far as I'm concerned. And of course, we are kind of special because we give those things away with the money of our members. We're also kind of special because the major danger or risk to us with this is reputation risk. So we paid the price quite heavily, and we were quite arrogant and thought, well, we've got it pretty much done. We use not more powerful devices than we need, so they're not really attractive for DDoS and stuff. We close them, there's no open ports, we have them SSH callback to us and all that kind of stuff. But still, some academics found a way to go through the SSH callback, and they didn't do any damage, and they couldn't have done any damage, but they did something that we thought they wouldn't be able to do. And still, that costs a lot of money, to provide that kind of stuff. So it really depends, like the previous contributor said, it depends on what the trade-off is. So now let me come to a remark about this whole discussion. I think it mingles or it mixes together a lot of things. This IoT is this label to talk about motherhood and apple pie and God in the world. So I think it would help us if we would structure it in a way to find the issues that this room can deal with. Yeah. And I think if we talk about regulation or voluntary or self-regulation in the terms of the end systems, and it's not only IoT, it's the modem, it's even the laptop. Yeah. If we talk about that, I think we have to leave that self-regulation to the manufacturers of these things. We can offer help, and I'm quite glad that Kevin was here to tell us that ISOC has now taken the challenge to provide help and advice and capacity building and all the good stuff of awareness raising and that kind of stuff. But I think it's not this room that has to do the self-regulation, because we don't produce the crap. Yeah. So that's number one. So I think we should sort of get away from that tack, because it's not for this room. What is for this room? Well, for this room is the infrastructure. Yeah. And I'm getting quite worried when I hear things about let's cut users off if they use uncertified stuff and so on, because then we are back to the PTT, and I definitely don't want to go back to the PTT. Yeah. And I can over a beer I can tell you stories about the PTT coming to check on what kind of modem was connected in my university. No. With exactly that argument, I mean, you're going to harm our network, and it's all all of Germany will be without telephone service if you keep this up, right? So I don't think we should go down that road. I think Marco's analogy was a really interesting one. We should really talk about this. Our job is to run the infrastructure and secure the infrastructure. In the face of all this adverse stuff out there that we now call IoT. And then we should think of how do we need to self-regulate in order to do our job properly and not be regulated. Yeah. And there I see one of the things about the analogy Marco used, the airline industry, does not really apply also to this IoT thing, because the real analogy is the cars. Yeah. Everybody can use a car, and not everybody can use an airplane, or at least not one heavier than a ton or so. Yeah. Yeah. So I think we should also advocate that the end devices should have some form of self-regulation and maybe ultimately regulation, but it's not our business. Mm-hmm. We are the airline industry, and I think one of the things that Marco hasn't mentioned is it's not only regulation that makes this safe, but it's the culture. There's a security culture in this business, and I'm a pilot myself, and my son's a commercial pilot, so I have some insight into this. And one part I just want to mention about the culture there is no blame analysis of mishaps. We don't have that. I think it would be a really, really good idea if we as an industry could start a system like that. Let me, if I may, like for 30 seconds more, explain how this works in the airline industry. First of all, there is a culture that if there's two pilots in the cockpit, and it gets really, really, really beaten into them that they should speak up if something's out of whack. You know, even if the guy on the left hand is the captain, and he has 40,000 hours and has been a fighter pilot before and so on, and the guy on the right hand side has 10 hours in the in that aircraft and has never been a fighter pilot. Yeah, it's rammed into them that that even the junior guy should talk to the senior guy and say, hey, this is out of whack. When many accidents happen when this doesn't happen. The other thing is when something goes wrong, there is, at least in the US and in many other countries, a voluntary reporting system where you can go and say, hey, this went wrong. And it's kind of, the results are anonymous. So these things can be discussed, can be learned from, without putting blame on the person who made the wrong thing. Even in some countries like the US, even if you make a violation of a law, if you report it in that system, you get once a year or so, you get a get out of jail free card. Yeah, for this. Yeah. NASA runs this. It's not the FAA that's the licensing, the regulator authority, but a different authority runs this. So we should maybe learn from this kind of culture and these kind of mechanisms and see whether we can improve our image with those who are about to regulate us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We should take all the questions, then we will have some remarks. Remco.
So previously, I thought the longest 30 seconds I've ever witnessed was the finals of the Eurovision Song Contest, but Daniel's just outdone that. I'd like to step up from the airline industry to the space industry. Yes, why not go into space? And there was this guy who actually ended up in the US Senate, and he's a guy called John Glenn. And there's a really good quote I want to share with you. This is at a Senate hearing. He says, "I felt exactly how you would feel if you're getting ready to launch and you were sitting on top of 2 million parts, all built by the lowest bidder on a government contract." So I'm here as sort of private internet citizen, commercial person. None of the people who built any of those parts had it as part of their brief that the rocket should not blow up. However, the rocket did not blow up most times. And that wasn't because these people were malevolent or that NASA was actually doing a really good job making sure that all the parts did fit together even though they were made by the lowest bidder. We don't have that luxury. Same time, the people who are making these parts, these millions and billions of IoT devices, they don't have it in their remit to not make the rocket blow up. Their mission in life is to build a webcam that's $5 less in retail because they can sell more. And they don't get to spend an extra 6 months in debugging or have an engineering team consisting of multiple people revising software the whole time, which is one of the reasons why Atlas is still up in the air. And you're welcome. There is no supervising body, and there's never been a supervising body for the internet, and thank heavens for that. I'm with Daniel on that. We don't want to go back to the PTT age. It's only up to the people who actually end up buying this stuff to become aware that if you buy something that is that cheap, there's probably something wrong with it.
Okay, thank you. Last
Hello.
question.
I will be brief, I hope. My name is Ivan. I'm coming from the MedNet ISP, local ISP in Serbia. But mostly I will talk as a parent right now, because the one thing that I think I haven't heard so far, Internet of Things is user related, not technical stuff. And I haven't heard so far anything about educating users about Internet of Things, because I have an 8-year-old daughter. One day she came home from school and said, "Why are you keeping your phone charger in a socket when your phone is not charging?" Our teacher said it can blow up, it will use electricity, and something may go wrong. Education as it is in Serbia, because I'm not literate enough to say how it is outside, is right now, since I have a 13-year-old son who is learning to program robots right now, some project which is going on, is oriented to learn children how to use things. But it's not oriented to learn children, not adults. As a gentleman said, I now would like a simple life. Even me, I'm 42, I don't like to read too many manuals. I like to plug it in to work. I've done that 25 years so far. But if you start at an 8-year-old to show them what effect some action can take, and now I'm speaking regarding Internet of Things, in a simple way, in a more complex way, what will happen if he doesn't pay attention? He may pay 300 euros data charge for using phone without proper package or something like that. That will help us as an industry. In our network, the main issue is DVR devices, which are installed by professionals who simply does not give a damn to even change a password. And they ask us to provide IP address that the user can communicate directly, even without a router. So I think that as an industry, we should focus on some regulation, but I think that the focus for RIPE and everyone here should be on educating the youngs right now what will happen if they go wrong with Internet of Things. Okay. That is my point of view.
Thank you. This is a very good discussion. Now we are officially over time, and if you agree, we would like to address some of these questions. Okay, another one. Okay, let's go more over time.
Just a quick addition to the previous comment, which is very useful. I think we should also educate adults, because how many people do you know to, let's say, elderly people especially, to write down PIN codes of their bank cards on the bottom of the bank card? So that's the same thing, right? So you need to educate people what can go wrong if they don't buy certain devices, if they just buy some, let's say, crap, plug it in, and they think, yeah, it's a plug and play, but what can go wrong, and they should be aware of the security dangers if they buy uncertified devices. Maybe that's the way to do it.
I like this discussion. There is a chairman of the session.
Yeah, thank you. But now I'm just participant.
Okay.
Just short question. What's the relation about implementation of IP version 6, V6, sorry, and internet security for Internet of Things and Internet of Call? Relation between implementation, IP version 6.
Is that a question to me or to the panel?
For you.
To me. Well, IPv6 is not more secure or less secure than IPv4. It's just about the same. It depends. IPv6 provides more space, more addresses, and if you think today of the IoT or home automation system without IPv6, you are obviously doing something completely wrong from the start if you are building a greenfield. I think there is no relation, right? IoT usually are just smaller things than computers and phones and laptops. So I see IPv6 as one of the enablers how to actually deploy gazillions of these things. As you know, how I ask people when I'm doing IPv6 training, do you know how many devices you can fit in 1/64? Do you know how many? Does anyone know how many devices you can fit in 1/64? All of them. All of them in the world. So I don't see a lot of connection. We should deploy IPv6 anyway. That's not even a question, right? But I would like to. Oh, Paul.
Hi there. Thank you. I'm Paul Rennick from the RIPE NCC. Thank you very much, actually, for your perspectives, actually, here on one very specific part of IoT. I know that it can represent such a big snowball of a thing that it's hard to actually put your finger on something. Daniel said something very interesting, actually. He said, you know, everybody's kind of looking at IoT and just randomly kind of picking things in there. I think it's because we probably isn't something that we can all hold in our hands, like maybe some of the things that we do when we're at home playing with our routers. We can get our heads around that, but we really can't get our heads around this topic of what IoT actually means. It means something different to probably everybody in this room. And I think for me, actually, we've been following this a lot in the RIPE NCC, and I know that Marco's done some fantastic work to kind of dig in there, and I have sucked his brain for everything he's got in teaching me maybe on what's going on there. We have a lot to learn. The point that I want to make, though, here is that what I haven't understood from either the network operators or the ISPs is where is that place that everybody's coming together to share or to talk about the piece of the puzzle or the part that they think they need to own in this debate. I don't see this. It's not really in RIPE, right? I mean, I think there is possibly a working group on the cards in there, but I think it's very late in the game, to be honest with you. Of course, I've spoken to the European Commission at length with this. We were invited into this IOTI party. The ITU is talking about this. IETF, there's standards bodies going on. I mean, the debate kind of goes around in all kind of different circles, but when you take a piece, and I think this is the part that I liked about what Daniel said, when you take the piece about what is affecting us, the infrastructure, what are we going to push away and then slice and say, we need to deal with this. Where are those topics being discussed so that we can answer her question?
Exactly.
Topic, right? I'd like to know that, and I would really like the panelists to tell me, where should we go? I mean, clearly we're all a bunch of sheep that are waiting for some direction, so I'd like to know where this has to go.
Thank you very, very much, Paul. And please, who would like to start?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Paul, because there isn't really any one place. I think we did this kind of audit, I suppose you'd say, of all the different IoT organizations. I think there's something like 40 or something like this in different places, and all dealing with one particular thing. Some are competing with each other, some are in, you know, doing different aspects. So I think the answer is there is no one place, and this is a lot of the problem that we're having.
There is a jungle out there of all these alliances and organizations.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Kevin. I don't think there is one place, and I think you're absolutely right. Is we need to carve out that niche, and of course there needs to be some high-level coordination. But there's also, I mean, there are fora like IGF and stuff where we can coordinate. What I see as problematic is that many potential players in the IoT try to own it all. I'm not going to name any acronyms here, but we all know who we're talking about. And it's impossible. And I also see that at the national level, where all of a sudden the telecoms or internet regulator thinks they have an opinion about cars, because the car's connected. And everybody in his own respective role and everybody in his own respective competence is I think, the best way forward. We know a lot about networks, and as several speakers say, actually that end-user device and the stuff behind that end-user device is less of my problem. Let's stick to our own little world and stick to the stuff we actually can influence and the stuff we need to protect. That's important too. This is my network. Can I please protect it?
Yeah, this was also my question about ITF RIPE community. My example it was that I really liked what Marco did for that time for the models. I was looking the information, so I hope that I will get an answer if the RIPE could provide this environment. I agree that we know all the guidelines, how to do it and where to do it. I really don't care if I will rename them and put the IoT there if this helps. But can we start that we have some place where we'll start, that I can also get the feedbacks about the devices. I don't think that we will succeed with regulation, but at least if the customers will have some place to look somewhere, and I would like to see that it's community driven, then obviously if they need to be also educated, but they still have some place where to check it. For these vendors, what is going wrong, that the others can give their opinions, because if this is the vendor influence, then I know what will be the reports there. So this was my question. Should the ITF should do something? My opinion is that should the community do there? The question is, can we do through the RIPE community? Even these are just the links to which are pointing to the different documents. I don't care, but at least that I have the starting point, and then the vendors cannot complain it, because here you go, here you have it, and that we can do some workshops, which could be also related to the developers. I agree, if you have the budget, if you're academic, it's quite a different story. And I agree that I would like to produce as cheap as possible device. But anyway, in the end, if they will have the resources and we are pointing them to the right place, I think that we can change something.
Can I quickly add a clarification, because you've now made several references. So the work I did about 9 years ago in search of an IPv6 capable DSL modem, I started documenting what I encountered in the market, and that led to me publishing several articles. Just to be clear, that was me as a RIPE community member. That was strictly a volunteer effort. That wasn't anything initiated by the RIPE NCC. So indeed, I would love to see people in the community working together and pushing this together. But remember, I was only looking at an IPv6 CP. That was a very strict, small thing. This is going to be a mammoth task. Want to start writing?
Do we hear volunteers here? You want to add something, Paul?
I do. Thank you very much, actually, for pointing that out, because what I'd like to say is that, sure, okay, we can see a little bit of momentum going on in RIPE. I don't think RIPE could hold all the cards for this, right? But certainly for the network operator and the ISPs, or for the portion of IoT that we think is interesting for the transport layer or anybody who feels they're part of RIPE community, why is the debate not happening louder? So what I'm saying is that I'm encouraging those that are here that want to see that, and you've seen that there has been already some talk about this working group starting in RIPE. You like-minded people need to come together and make a bit of noise in order to own your debate.
Exactly.
You've done it before. This isn't, I think, and so many of you and I, you're all, there are many guilty in this room, because I've had many of you come up to me and say, oh, Paul, IoT, it's just the same old thing. It's just labeled a little bit differently. Well, if it is that, and you're really not so afraid of this, then why are you not owning the debate on this part, that you believe the slice that you can take and you can own? I'd really like to see the RIPE community come together and do that. So I encourage you to support that and participate in that. Thank you.
And in the discussion like this, when we started the discussion, it's quite nice that we can see the giant ball. We try to understand the ball and where to grab it and which part of the ball we need to work with.
Yeah. The nice thing is that we are very well respected, okay, as a community, right? And I think that for portions of it, the RIPE NCC representing its membership base out there, we are approached by different governments or even different players, different standards bodies, everything from ITU to IEEE. We have relations with them all, GSMA. We know all these people. We see them in IG fora, we see them in technical fora. So this isn't something so new to us. And I think everybody's scampering around. And what I'm seeing is that a lot of folks are out there actually putting labels on what they think they are or what they're going to do inside of this space. I have yet to see the operator community or the ISPs actually put a stake down and talk about the things that they're actually championing in this space. So yeah. I know this is new, and I'm a little bit excited about this, because I think that if it is something that we need to do, I'm more than happy to support this any way I can, right? As a part of the RIPE NCC staff, right, and providing support to the RIPE community, but I think it's time to move a little bit forward on this, so that if there is a position, it needs to be identified. You folks need to identify something and make some moves out there, because actually, from what I understand, and I have been to some of these IoT fora, right, out there, government ones or even standards ones, and what I've seen is that actually, kind of the whole IP area, people are kind of like, who are you? What? I mean, we seem to be this layer that, or this grouping that everyone's kind of circumvented. I mean, some people are kind of like, I don't even know who you are. You're from RIPE NCC, what? So, maybe this is something that I'd like to have a little bit clearer, because I don't have the whole picture right.
Okay, we are officially 15 minutes over time. Is that quick?
30 seconds. After what Remco said, no, it's. I think I just wanted to speak to the point that we should do. We as a community or RIPE NCC should do something on evaluating end devices. Personally, I think, and just as a person, I think that's not within our remit. It's just a too big task, as somebody else has said. I think, again, just to repeat what I said earlier, the manufacturers of these devices should come together and actually do stuff like this. We can inform the process by saying, okay, this is what we think should be minimum kind of things, but other people have done that already. I think we should stick to our own stuff and see that the infrastructure runs and see that we do the self-regulation that improves our handling of the threats that come from these end devices inside our own remit of responsibility. IoT is not the only buzzword. The other buzzword that's running around in regulation circles is critical infrastructure. And we're much more close to that.
Okay. Thank you. We need to, Goran, do you have any closing remarks? Then we need to wrap it up.
Well, my closing remarks would be that we need to concentrate as the RIPE community and RIPE NCC and other things, that we need to concentrate on some things that are our sort of more focused area, and that is the networks, that is the filtering in the networks, and that actually I agree with the fact that IoT producers should worry about their product and worry about their regulation, but we need to worry about ourselves and what we are doing and what we are actually regulating and self-regulating, or what are we taking care of. For us, IoT device can be sort of consequence, but we need to attack that source from our perspective with the tools that we have.
Okay. Oh, Florence.
Yes, hi, I'm Florence. I'm not going to talk in the name of Google because, let's say, I have an extremely biased opinion about this whole topic. So just let me speak as an internet citizen and just throw a question here. So you have some people out there which are doing CDNs and also the end devices on those CDNs and also the software platform on that. So it gets really complex and also very interesting. So just a question to all of you, right crowd, and to you, Paul and Daniel. Is that the time to create something like, I don't know, an IoT working group or anything like that?
Well, yeah, that's a very good point, Florence, and that actually came up at the last RIPE meeting. It did, and we've had 2 BOF sessions at RIPE on this. One general on IoT and one specifically on security. The room was packed. I sat on the floor, Indian style, like a young person would. And yeah, it was great. I mean, the momentum was there, Florence. So I think the community just needs to show what they want to see, what they want to talk about, and then bring this forward. We'd be more than happy to facilitate the support there.
So, given the fact that we are 20 minutes over time, this topic is of interest to this community, apparently. But we need to hurry it up. Is it okay? We need to close the session because we will have just 10 minutes for the coffee break, and then we have another IXP topic. Well, that sucks a little bit, but you know, this topic is apparently so interesting that I knew that it will go over time. Sorry. My apologies to the chair. Thank you very much.